Well, I think we should get started. Good morning, colleagues from Brazil, and good afternoon, colleagues from UK. My name is Márcio Silva, Filho, and I'm Deputy Provost of Postgraduate Studies at the University of Sao Paulo. I'm delighted to chair this second webinar, Heading to the New Normal, and how COVID-19 is changing higher education and the perspectives for university research and teaching. I would like to welcome you all to this international forum. This event is organized by the Postgraduate Office of the University of Sao Paulo with the participation of the Institute of Biology at the University of Brasilia. Universities cannot control or predict the level of government-imposed lockdowns, as well as domestic travel, transportation restrictions, natural border crossing barriers, or non-immigrant visa issuance for students and researchers. Universities, however, are able to exercise control and establish good practices in areas for which they have traditionally assumed responsibility. Teaching and mentoring, for instance, integrity of academic processes such as testing and assessment, access to information, the ability to conduct research and prove theories in the laboratory, and the sharing of knowledge with a wide community. By sharing various perspectives about the success we have had and the challenges we have overcome as well, we can learn from other universities in Brazil and abroad. During this forum, we will be presented with several institutional plans for moving ahead. For the first forum we had a month ago, we had illustrious guests from Brazil and abroad, led by Chancellor of the University of Texas System, Professor Millikan, the Vice President and Associate Provost for Internationalization, Professor Michael Pippinger from the University of Notre Dame in US, both in US, and also Chancellor Evilásio Teixeira from the Pontifical Catholic University from Rio Grande do Sul, and all of them hosted by Professor Vahan Agopian, who is the president of the University of Sao Paulo. And the outcomes were really exciting, and we noticed that there is not a single recipe for the problems and the challenges we are facing right now. But today, we have outstanding guests from Brazil and UK. Our first speaker is Professor Sandra Goulart Almeida. Professor Sandra Goulart Almeida is a national reference of public higher education and research with more than 25 years of experience and has acted as president of Federal University of Minas Gerais, one of the most prestigious universities in Brazil since 2018. Our second speaker is Professor Stephen Flint. Professor Flint is actually the Associate Vice President for Internationalization at the University of Manchester, UK, and he is also the chair of the Network for Vice Chancellors from Universities UK. He has a long, successful academic and scientific careers at the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences at the University of Manchester. Well, each one of you will have approximately 15 to 20 minutes to address your view on this particular theme and highlight possible scenarios for the post-COVID-19 era. After the presentations, we will have time for questions from our audience. Professor Sandra Goulart, thank you again for being with us at this event, and this stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Márcio. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to congratulate you and everybody at USP for putting together such an important event in such difficult times for all of us. I would like to thank President Farhan for the invitation, and also Professor Baeta Neves, Professor Loureiro, who is a close friend, and yourself for the invitation and for including my university among, the universities who are discussing this important issue today. Let me try and see if I can share my presentation. I'm not very good with this, but let me see if I can work it out. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Is the presentation on?
Yes. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, okay. So I'll be talking briefly today about the topic that was asked of me, and that is heading to the new normal from the perspective of my university. This is a picture of the central building of our university, which is now, we are all in remote activities at the moment. I'll be talking briefly about the 5 main topics. The first one is, what have you learned from this pandemic reality, this new pandemic reality? How the second topic I would like to address very briefly is just a start for our beginning to talk about this issue, maintaining a learning environment in the new normal. How can we discuss this issue? Another thing that I would like to discuss is basic issues that facing this new normal from our perspective in Brazil and from my institution specifically. I would like to talk briefly also about the academic challenges that we all have faced, and especially here in Brazil. And in the end, I would like to close this presentation talking about the perspectives and some expectations as well. So first of all, I would like to address the first issue. What have we learned from this new pandemic reality? The first thing is something that it might seem obvious to some people, is the importance of sustainable investment in education and science. I say that it might be obvious, but we are coming in Brazil, especially the Federal University, we are coming from a series of attacks against the universities, against science, a very difficult period for us. And with this new pandemic reality, what happened is that the view from society has somewhat changed, and the universities have been regarded as a very important place, and the universities have played a very important role in this new pandemic reality. Universities, especially the federal universities and the state universities, which are famous for the research that they do in Brazil, and this is a special context here in the Brazilian scenario, is that most of the research that is done in the country is done in public universities, in some private ones as well, but mostly in the public universities and in public research centers. So universities have been actively involved in COVID-19 research activities, in testing, in trying new drugs, in trying the vaccines. So this, in a way, has been very important for the visibility of the universities in Brazil, and also for the recognition of the importance of investing in education and science. Is something that has been a challenge for us here in Brazil. So as a consequence, there's been a lot of collaboration with the public sector. For example, here at the Federal University of Minas Gerais, there's been a lot of collaboration with the local government, with the city of Belo Horizonte, with the city of Montes Claros, in which we have our campuses, and with the regional government, and also with the federal government. We received some support, some financial support from the federal government to carry on specific COVID-19 research activities, especially testing. We are the major university in the state that has carried on a lot of testing for the population in the state. So this has played a major role in terms of collaboration with the public sector. So it's been ages since we have seen such an important role played by the universities in the country in this new scenario. Another important issue that we have learned from this new pandemic reality is the importance and the means to establish a strong communication with society. So the university have been an important vehicle for information about how to deal with this new pandemic reality from all perspectives. From the perspective of hygiene, from the perspective of social contact, from the perspective of dealing with the vulnerability of the community, from all perspectives, all fields of knowledge from our universities have been concentrating on facing the challenges of this new pandemic reality. And another issue that I think it's very, very important, and I would like to start this talk mentioning this, and I would like to close my talk also stressing this important factor, is the collaboration, the intense collaboration between universities all over the world, between our universities in Brazil, but also with universities all over the world. This is especially the case with the attempts to try to find a vaccine. You know, Brazil has been involved with several groups of researchers all over the world, with the University of Oxford, now with the group from China as well. My university has been starting today with the test with the vaccine from China. And so we have all been working together with collaboration. This is the tools for us to face this new pandemic reality. So this is what we have learned, is that we have to work together, universities, the public sector, all universities together to face this new pandemic reality. And another issue that I would like to address is how to deal with the learning environment in this new normal. That's what we have been calling this period, this new normal. The context is very difficult, very complex, very dynamic. What we know today, we did not know in the beginning of March when we suspended all activities in presence, present activity. The importance of, so we have to change our protocols, have changed our way of dealing with the situation, has changed since we started facing these new challenges. We have learned that we also have planning plays an important role. We started planning here in our university since March 18th, when we had to cancel classes in presence, and we had to start a totally different way of dealing with work and with the students as well. We have to work with collective decisions. It's very important. It's part of the way that we construct our universities. It's very important to think in terms of responsibility of the university, to think in terms of discussing with the community, in a dialogue with the staff, with faculty, and especially with the students, who really, in a way, suffered a lot with this new situation, who had to face issues that were unknown to them and also to all of us, but which caused a lot of discomfort, a lot of uneasiness, a lot of difficult situations for our student body in general. So what I mentioned was that we had to learn to focus on planning in stages. So the first month, I think March, we spent the whole of March planning what to do and how to organize ourselves in this new reality that we had to face. And then we started planning what has been called emergency remote teaching in face of what we saw as a long-standing situation. At first, we thought we were canceling classes for just a month, and then we realized that this virus would stay with us for a long time, and that we needed to plan and think for a long-term period, and start thinking about hybrid models and slow return to normality when it would be possible. And nobody knows at this point when it will be possible for us here in Brazil. Something else that we had to learn, that we had to discuss, and this is typical of Brazil, maybe more specific, Márcio, to federal universities, because state universities in Brazil, they have autonomy. The federal universities in Brazil, we don't have, we have autonomy only in terms of the law, but we don't have in terms of our acts. So this is something that we had to face daily, is that a claim, a respect for our freedom and autonomy of the universities, of the federal universities, that we have to decide. Our universities are very different. My university is a very large university, not as large as USP, but it's a large university. It's very different from a small university. So our reality is different from the other universities. So we need to have freedom and autonomy to decide about the road to take. And sometimes that is not possible because of the amount of legislations that we have to follow as a federal institution, federally funded as well. And what were the basic, another issue that we needed to discuss is what are the basic concerns facing this new normal. For us here in our universities, and especially in Brazil, in my university, we have more than 50%, specific 56% of our students come from the public sector. That is, they're a student from low-income families. So that changes completely the focus that we have to give in terms of attention to this new normal. So we have to consider higher education at this level as a right, especially in a country that has very low coverage for students between the age of 15 to 25 in high school. So we have very low rate, and this is a special concern that we have, that a higher education for our student has to be conceived as a right, especially for a public education, public university as ours. And one major concern for us here in Brazil is digital inequality. You know, some of the data are simply shocking. You know, if you think in terms of the homes, you know, we would say that a large number of the students do not have access to digital means, either direct, that is, they don't have any access, you know, to internet or computers, or they have very very limited access. So this is a reality in Brazil. What we have in terms of basis for that is really shocking in terms of access. At our university, we have about 30% of our students have very limited access to internet, and some of them do not have, for example, a computer. They have only access to a cell phone, which is not the ideal for the learning environment, as a learning environment. So this places us with a challenge of dealing with quality in higher education, which is something very important for us. We are a university that really values quality of education that it gives to our students, but we also have to think in terms of equity and inclusion of our students. And this leads us to the material condition of our students, but also of the staff that we have. We also learned that some of our staff do not have access at home of a good internet connection. They don't have the means, you know, to do a good job from home. And sometimes the same thing happens with faculty. You know, they have to come and get the equipment that they use at the university so that they can do some proper job. So there are some material conditions that limit this new normal that we are faced with. And some of a major concern that we have also is with physical and mental health of our community. Physical, because members of our community are being infected with COVID-19, and we do have to give support to them in these moments of crisis. And mental health is a serious issue, not only among the students, which is something that has affected several universities and the younger generation, we all know that, but also our community in general, because of the way that they have to deal with isolation, social isolation, the way that they have been having a lot of difficulty dealing with this new normal. And another basic issue is the need to establish rigorous biosafety protocols. Not everything, a lot of the work at the university is being carried on at the moment, especially, as I mentioned, to face COVID-19. A lot of research has been going on. So our university is working, you know, trying to find solutions so that we can support the work that has been done in several areas, we do need to have rigorous biosafety protocols at the moment, especially now in Brazil, especially in our hometown, in which we have an ascending line of spread of COVID at the moment. So we have not reached a plateau. We have not stabilized yet. So the situation is still very unstable for us here. And here we move on to the academic challenges, which I think involve us all. First of all, we need to talk about emergency remote teaching, which is also what we have adopted. We have done that in terms of postgraduate studies, and also with graduate studies, we are starting now in March a series of activities. We are returning the semester using emergency remote teaching, because we cannot even think about the hybrid model at this moment. At this moment, the only thing we can do is to use emergency remote teaching, which is different, we know, from online learning, from distance education, from e-learning. Here in Brazil, there are two different categories. For example, e-learning, distance education in Brazil is a totally different kind of education. It has its own regulation. It has its different entrance in terms of education. We do have distance learning at my university, but it's separate from what we are doing in terms of something that is done remote, but only because of this emergency situation we are all facing. And one of the challenges is teacher training for pedagogical emergency remote teaching or online teaching. We learned that the majority of our professors do not have training, and it's not something that we can do overnight. We've been doing that since March. We have already trained 1,000 of our professors, to start this emergency remote teaching, but there is still a lot to do. And there is a lot of resistance. That's true. Most of our professors, they're not used to this new environment. They're not. It's new to them. It's new to the students. So that's also a challenge. We will eventually have to move into a hybrid model. But we don't know when that's going to be possible. It's not a possibility for us now. It's not going to be a possibility in August. We don't know when that is going to be possible. And one of the things we face is the kind of teaching that we have to do, synchronous or asynchronous learning. What we have learned is that asynchronous learning is better because it gives the student more flexibility. They can watch a video, they can watch a class at different times. So it gives them, it's better for the students. But we also have learned that it's important to keep contact with the students. It's important to have some meetings when the professors, when the teachers get in contact with the students, really to listen to them and to hear. So this presence is very important. So that's why we think this is always going to be part of this new situation. And we have to address some new process of learning and teaching, which are centered on the students. None of this is new. It's not new, but it's been now, it's taken central stage, and we do have to address it. Words such as flipped classroom or active learning, they have been part of our vocabulary for many years, but they have not been adopted by our universities. So we will have to deal with them more. We will have to address those issues more frequently, and this is going to be a good thing, I think, from now on. And one of the things that we have to do is with flexibility. We do have to change the minds of the professors, change the minds of the students. Flexibility has to be the key word at this moment. And it's a moment which is very difficult for all of us. And one of the greatest challenges and danger for us is the danger of evasion and student retention. This is one of the major concerns that we all have at this moment. And to end my talk, to finalize my talk, I would like to talk about the perspectives and expectations. The first one is that we have to understand this moment as a moment of exceptionality. So that's why flexibility is so important. Our goal at the moment here in our university, in our city, in our state, is to preserve lives. This is our major goal. So people have to stay home if they can. And it's a challenge to do this in the context that I just mentioned. We also have to work beyond the crisis and to see that as a possibility, you know, of think in terms of an opportunity of evaluation and of improving our pedagogical practices, as I just mentioned. You know, think in terms of a more contemporary approach to teaching and learning. Without forgetting our fundamental values for us at our university, which is quality. We cannot forget that we have to give the best we can in terms of education, and we have to think in terms of inclusion and equality. These two things have to go hand in hand. Quality and inclusion. You know, one thing cannot exclude the other. We have to think about equality, inclusion, equity. And among all, and above all, we have to think about solidarity. And here I end where I begin, to talk about the importance to strengthen the solidarity and collaboration between our institutions. I think that's the goal. If we have learned something from this new moment, is that we need to collaborate, we need to be more flexible, we need to have more solidarity among our community and between our institutions. And that's why I thank you, Márcio, so much, USP, for inviting me to be here today. I think that's what we have to do at this moment: collaborate, exchange views, exchange experiences, and that's where it will lead us in terms of facing this new challenge. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. It has been a pleasure being with you today. Thank you.
Well, Professor Sandra, thank you so much for this comprehensive and interesting issue you pointed out in your talk. So I believe that you have a lot of questions at the end of this forum to be addressed. But without further delay, we now move to our next speaker, and Professor Stephen Flint. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation, and the stage is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning and good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are. I have a few slides that I will just share in a moment, but then I'll just really talk about what we're trying to do at Manchester, the problems we've been having, and I'll try and end actually with some upsides to this. Now, of course, none of us wanted COVID-19, and it's been a global disaster in many ways, and many people died, but even with something like that, there are things which, and Sandra hinted at this as well, that we can take with us and actually be positive about. So first of all, let me just share the screen just to show you a little bit about the University of Manchester, because there are some issues that we have that this will sort of help show more clearly. If I can just get it, sorry, let me just start that again. Okay, and then application window. Right. Why has it done that? Okay. Okay, thank you. So a few words about the University of Manchester. In the UK, universities are generally not so big compared with many countries. So we're one of the biggest in the UK at just over 40,000 students. So that's a little bit smaller than UFMG and much smaller, of course, than USP. Our composition is interesting. We have more than 1/4 of the students are from other countries, and with COVID, that's its own problem. We have a very broad range of degree programs and so on. But I will come back later to the challenges we're facing with international students. A few Manchester faces from the past: Alan Turing and Ernest Rutherford, and two Nobel laureates. We're well known for graphene at Manchester. And we're organised into 3 major faculties. So again, these are quite large. Each faculty is round about, I suppose, 15 to 20,000 students. Humanities, biology, medicine and health, science and engineering, and then of course there are constituent schools and departments. Quite obviously, really, the Faculty of Biology, Medicine and Health has been extremely active through this period. In fact, although the UK locked down on the 23rd of March, we've had some labs open all the way through, obviously labs related to COVID research. But the rest of the university shut down at about 4 hours notice, actually. Now, the other thing that Manchester's done over the last years is to develop a lot of institutes where we bring people from different departments and they sit together across traditional boundaries. And this slide got me thinking, you know, one of the big challenges with COVID, of course, and other infections like this, is that it completely works against your philosophy, which is bringing people together as close as possible, you know, to discuss ideas, to make new breakthroughs. And yet here we are trying to distance people 2 meters at least. So it goes completely against everything that we've been trying to do. When we think of our scholarships programs as well, we bring students from many developing countries. And this is a real challenge, of course, because as we all know, the rate at which this virus is spreading around the world is very diachronous, and you know, some countries might be largely clear and others haven't hardly started yet. So that's a real problem. So that's just a few slides about Manchester, just to set the scene. And I'll just get rid of this now. Okay. And then perhaps start talking about some of the challenges we face. So I mentioned that the UK shut down on the 23rd of March, so almost exactly 4 months ago. In fact, I wasn't there. I was on field work. I'm a geologist. I was on field work with some PhD students, actually in Mexico. And that's another story about trying to get home when the flights closed down and so on. So actually, I've been away from my office in the university for 5 months. So in some ways in the UK, it was kind of, well, easy is the wrong word. None of this has been easy. It was mid-semester when all of this happened. You know, so our academic year runs from late September, and end of semester 1 is after Christmas, you know, the late January, and then semester 2 runs through until around June. So happening mid-semester was a good thing if it did have to happen, because you know, all the students had been in the university, even the first years, you know, for 6 months or so, or nearly 6 months, and basically we you know, worked night and day to put things online. But it was an extension of existing interaction, existing teaching. Sure, they had to sort of go home or go back to student residences, but there was that helped. What we're faced with now, we're now in the undergraduate summer break, although master students are still continuing with project work, and we're all busy getting ready for the next academic year, so the late September. We've decided on a few changes, though, as you might imagine. Our hope is that we will be physically back in the university on the 1st of September. That may or may not happen. We're starting to see some local increases in infection in the UK. Not many at the moment and quite small, but other countries in Europe have been seeing the same, so it's uncertain. But the idea is that we do get back physically then. But right now, between now and then, it's only 8 weeks away. We decided that the first semester will be both physical people there and online. The idea for this is that some students, international students, will probably be still locked down in September, October in some countries. So we will hope that the majority of students can physically get to us, and that is also not clear. When we're looking at projections now for the amount of airline seats in September and October between China and the UK, there's not enough. There's absolutely not enough. So there's a big campaign to encourage airlines to, put more flights on. There's even talk of chartering planes and so on. But the idea is that we will offer our normal, with a small n, I think, normal programs for students that can physically be in Manchester, but we will also have everything online for those that cannot be for the first semester. And our plan is that for those students, we hope they will arrive for the start of the second semester, which is February of next year. Again, all of this could go horribly wrong, of course, we don't know. So the detailed challenges of trying to do it both ways at once is interesting. In STEM subjects, it's the biggest challenge is things like laboratory teaching. We're still trying to maintain social distancing in labs, 2-meter spacing. So of course, the same lab, that can normally take 100 can probably take 25, maybe 30 maximum. So we'll have to run that same lab, twice or even 3 times. So that eats into research time and all of that, of course, as well. So this is not simple. Sandra mentioned a very important point around digital inequality. Now, the UK is a relatively wealthy country, but the city of Manchester has areas of quite serious inequality, actually, and particularly in surrounding towns, and indeed, where there is no computer in the house, and so on. So that's an issue. We're putting together schemes for students to be able to access laptops and so on. It's a major problem. Also, Sandra mentioned health. We're very concerned about this, both mental and physical, as well. In terms of, and one of the things we've learned there, actually, we can typically, as academics, you concentrate on the teaching and, do we have those lectures online? Do we have an asynchronous part and then, a flipped classroom problem solving part, all of these things. And they're all generally doable. We can sometimes, though, forget that the other needs that the students have, financial hardship issues. I mentioned, access to laptops or even, Wi-Fi signal. And then with our large number of international students, we have issues when they've gone home, and that could be to or anywhere in the world. Some countries, of course, there are access problems to software. So, if we have a master's students class of, 25 students from all over, and we can do some of this work remotely, you do a demonstration of the analysis and then ask them to, perform that analysis on their own, on other data sets. And then we find the software isn't licensed in that country, or the software supplier who, very generously gives universities free or almost free licenses has commercial reasons why they don't want that software running for free in country X or country Y. Quite understandable, really, but it's our problem. So things like that we've learned quite a lot from, really. Those are probably the main things I wanted to touch on. Just to sort of finish, I've written down here future upsides. One of the things we're finding when we have video conferences like this with some of our strategic partner institutions is that, everyone's saying, well, of course, this is such a mess and so on. But you know what? It's pushed us by about 2 years further down the distance learning, e-learning, blended learning pipeline. I'm sure we all say, yep, we're into that. We're going to do more of that. and then we kind of don't, or we do it slowly. This forced us further down that road. So I do think, looking forwards, that we've got lots of opportunities for discussing at least co-delivery, of courses or parts of courses. Think how exciting it would be if you were doing environmental sciences and perhaps you were based in Manchester, but then we wanted to know about biodiversity in Brazil, and we were able to share a course with either Sandra's colleagues or USP colleagues, just for example, and we can think of that around the world where teaching is actually enhanced because you bring in the real best examples and so on in all sorts of subjects, not just natural sciences, but social sciences, medicine, of course, and other things. So I think buried in all of this trauma that I think we've all been facing, I do see some interesting positives eventually emerging. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this very exciting talk, Professor Flint, and congratulations for this overview on about what has been done in Manchester. We have now time for questions. We have several ones here with me. Some of them were directed specifically to one of you, and then some of them are in general, and I would like to have your point of view about them. But just to start, so Professor André Maranhão, to Professor Sandra, how the Federal University of Minas Gerais is dealing with virtual classes. Are there any training for professors to deal with these virtual tools? And what about the poor student access? So I have mentioned about this low-income families. And is there any partnership with the private sector? So, yeah.
Thank you, Márcio, Professor Stephen Flint. It's a pleasure to hear you and to see that we share a lot of the challenges that we've been facing. Thank you, Andrea, for the question. How have we been dealing? One of the things that we have been doing is we have been training the professors. We have been offering to our professors. We have already trained 1,000 of our professors, offering workshops and courses about online teaching. So we have a platform. We just established a platform which is called Integração Docente. How do we translate that? Integration teaching. Teachers integration or something like that, I think would be the best translation of the platform we created. So in that platform, we offer all kinds of teaching to our professors. Since how to record a video, how to use a platform to teach, how to prepare coursework. So we have been doing that over the past month. We have been taking care of that. It's not easy. It's a challenge, a lot of the professors have a lot of difficulty because they're not used with this. They're not used to this new reality. But we have been putting a lot of effort into that training, into the training of our students, of our professors, into helping them cope with this new scenario. Regarding our students, what we have done and what we are doing right now is that we have had a couple of strategies to give them support. So we have at the moment, it ended yesterday, we have a couple of calls, as we call them, to give support to our students who don't have the means to carry on their studies by virtual means. So we have, for example, we're going to give them support so that they can acquire internet access, and we're also giving support to the students so that they can buy notebooks if they don't have, those who don't have the means. So we have just established several calls to support the students in that situation. Of course, this is going to require a lot of effort. It's going to require financial means from the university, but we have made that our priority, because if you don't give the students the means to follow the classes, that is going to be, we are going to have problems regarding inclusion, and this is going to be very bad for the university in general, in terms of our purpose as a public university. So we are going to start, we have decided, our council has decided to start our semester, our first semester 2020, on August 3rd, and we are going to give support to our students, to the about, as I mentioned, about 30%, 25 to 30% of our students who have difficulty, financial difficulty. So we are going to give them support through these calls that we have put forth. And in terms of our support with the private entities, what we have done, we also have started a campaign which is called For Inclusion, so that the companies can donate. They can donate money, or they can donate, for example, computers if they're not using. So we have done that as well. So it's in process at the moment. So any person from the university or company as well, they can donate to give support that our students in need. A good example is Santander Universities, who gave support to our students, and we are going to use that so that we can work with the inclusion of our students in this difficult time. What we have concluded is that we can only start this emergency remote teaching if we are able to include a great number of our students in need. And in our case, as a public university, we do have a considerable number of students who need support, either through the internet, but they also give support in terms of to keep their studies, in terms of food, in terms of maintaining their living standards. So this is something that we have been taking care of so that we can start this new period. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Well, to Professor Flint, to what extent internationalization is affected, and what to do to foster collaboration in research during this period?
Thank you. That's a very good question. I remember it was in April, probably a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks after the UK lockdown. I had a Zoom meeting with the deans of our 3 faculties and said to them, well, I know you're busy with all of this stuff right now, but the international agenda has to go on. If we stop that, we lose a lot of time, and it's always harder to start things back up when you've stopped them. So I'm still going to be bugging you guys with requests for this and that, and I know you'll tell me that you're fighting the fire of COVID right now and go away. And that's kind of how it was, but we got through it. And it's easy to say, yeah, you know, it's what we have to do is today rather than these plans, these grand plans. But what really helped me was to have meetings with colleagues from our partner universities. And they said the same thing. They said, let's not lose the ball here. You know, let's keep the ball on the pitch and keep playing the international game, because you know, that will actually help in the long run anyway. And so we've been using, you know, video conferencing a lot. It's relatively easy to keep existing relationships going that way. It's harder to start new ones. unless you're face to face, actually. So, we're just hoping that, next year things will be a lot more normal, and that we will keep these things moving. I mean, it's a major issue for student mobility, of course. Language students, I mean, how are they going to learn Portuguese if they don't go to Portugal or Brazil or somewhere, and of course, what's happening there is everyone is saying, well, of course, we would have liked your students in the first semester, but can they come in the second semester? And just hoping, meanwhile, that, that will be okay. So it does take more effort, but so far, I think we've managed to keep things alive, keep things moving on. And I think everybody is hoping that, this is not going to go on forever.
Thank you very much. Another question to Professor Sandra from Connie McManus from the University of Brasilia. After the crisis, does the Federal University of Minas Gerais plan to go back to the old normal, or will attempts be made to update learning teaching techniques?
Thank you, Connie, for your question, and it's a very important, very good question. I think I tried to mention that at the end of our at the end of my talk. I think we're never going to be the same, for several reasons. First, because as Stephen Flint mentioned, the tragedy has affected us all. You're going to go back to the university with students who have lost, students and faculty and staff who have lost members of their family. So we're never going to be the same. But I also see, as I pointed out, I see this as an opportunity to think in terms of learning, teaching, and learning methods and things that we should have done by now and we have not done. Some of the issues that we are dealing with right now regarding teaching and learning, and I am from the area. I'm a professor of literature and languages as well. So we have been discussing that since the 90s. The concept that they have been talking about the classroom. Active learning is not something new. We have been discussing. Learning centered on the student. This is not new. We have been talking about that. The old method of teaching, in which you have a professor giving a lecture of an hour and the students just listening, it's dead. It's been dead for years, but all of us have been doing that for many years as well. So I think now we are faced with a new scenario in which we have to think we will have to change. It's not going to be the same. We will have to learn new methods. We have to teach in a different way. Having said that, I really don't believe that we are going to move on to a situation in which we're going to have only online teaching. I don't believe in that. And I don't believe in that for several reasons. One of them is because one of the greatest challenges that we have regarding distance learning and our universities, I think all of us, we offer distance learning in our universities. And it's an enormous challenge, evasion, dropout. The number of students that drop out along the way is simply enormous. Why? Because they get disinterested. They up to a certain point, they lose interest. Because you just, your connection is with a computer. You have to have a lot of discipline. Most of the students don't have. You have to know how to learn in this new environment. So it's not easy. So this is something that we are studying as well, that the best way to give this emergency remote teaching is by doing that asynchronous. That is, to record something and to give it to the student so that he or she can see the video at any time. But we also noticed that it is necessary to have some kind of interaction with the professor so that the students are motivated. Okay, so that's why I think that, yes, we are going to change. I think e-learning is going to be part of our reality. You know, remote teaching is going to be part of our reality. Our regulation in Brazil, Stephen, allows us to have up to 40% of our component using any kind of remote teaching or distance learning. We can use that in regular classes. We can use 40% of our classes using that. That's the Brazilian regulation. Most of us don't use it. We simply don't use it because we're not used. It's not it's not our tradition. So I think this is going to learn. It's going to become part of our habit because the students are going to get used to that. Professors are going to get used to that. But I do not think that it's going to replace the physical contact with the professors. I don't think it's going to replace presence. I don't think it's going to replace the interaction with the students, because this is what is getting this is what gets the students motivated. This is what gets them interested in a subject. This has been proved. There are studies that show that the professors play a very important role. They are not going to be the one transmitting knowledge, but they are they have an important role of facilitating learning, of motivating the students. And this is a very important role, and that cannot be disregarded. So that's why I think that emergency remote teaching is not going to replace what we do at university. That's why the term is remote. But I think that e-learning is going to be a very important component of what we do in the future. And this is going to just answering, getting a little bit into the answer that Stephen just gave, which I think is very important, something that you mentioned. Even international collaboration is going to be different, and it might be better. You know, look at the possibility of us giving, distant learning courses together, joint courses for our students. That's going to be fabulous. That's going to be a very important possibility for the future. So I do think that we are going to change. It's past the time that we change the way that we teach our students. And I think this is going to be a good beginning, but we're still going to have to face a lot of resistance. It's not going to be easy, but I think the discussion is on the front. Everybody is discussing it at the moment. So some of the words that we use nowadays, nobody used in the past. Active learning. The importance of incorporating e-learning in our regular classes. So it's going to change. I think it's really going to change, and I think it's going to change for the better. I really do think it's going when we come back. I don't think the answer is emergency remote learning. I don't think that's the answer, but it's going to help us see learning from a different perspective.
Excellent, Sandra. Well, I have another question to Professor Flint from our Provost of Postgraduate Studies. And here it is. How the funding agencies are dealing with COVID-19 in UK? In regard to scholarships, extension, and projects duration, how is these funding agencies dealing with this pandemics?
A very good question. Thank you. In a mixed sort of way, really, at the moment. So when we think of government-funded PhDs, for example, they have agreed that they will give a 6-month extension at the moment to the stipend and the tuition fees across the board, and that's welcome, of course. We're just hoping that, and we think that the students will be back actually before 6 months. If all goes to plan with us, I mentioned we're due back in on the 1st of September, so that will be less than 6 months. Of course, the problem is it varies almost on an individual basis with PhD students. Some students have had remote access workstations and have hardly hardly lost any time at all. Others have been able to do nothing if their labs were shut. In terms of government research grants, that's still being discussed actually. And then the other thing, that the big one for British universities is actually the income we receive from tuition fees from overseas students, which actually partly subsidises the true cost of research. That's the big worry at the moment, because all of the universities in the UK are waiting until September, the start of the academic year, to see how many students either turn up. I mean, they may have registered, but will they turn up? And also students that are deferring for a year to say, I'm still not happy about this, I'm going to wait a year, and I want my application to be considered, you know, for a year ahead. The deferral ones, that's not been such a big problem yet. So we think probably most of them will come. Then we've got a lot of work going on for everybody, from our sort of lawyers and contracts office through to other operations, regarding industry-funded research projects, you know, where we have a contractual obligation to, you know, to produce, you know, things to a time frame and so on. And if those labs have been completely shut, so we're having to work, discuss with the sponsor companies about kind of freezing the project for a number of months, say 6 months, and then starting again. But if we have postdocs being paid on that project, they still have to be paid. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's difficult. So the answer really is there's been some movement from the UK government on some parts of it. Other parts of it we're still working on, actually.
Thank you. To Professor Sandra, what are the main actions to have taken to cope with the autonomy issues you just mentioned in your talk?
Yes, that's a difficult issue to deal with, because from our based on our constitution, we do have autonomy, pedagogical autonomy, administrative autonomy, and autonomy of to conduct our universities. But what we have seen is that it's only in the law, and over the years what has happened is that there's been a lot of regulations and law, especially for us as federal university, that have limited our autonomy of decision. So we have a lot has been discussed over the years in an attempt to have a regulation that is going to be specific for our university. So there is right now in the Congress a project of law that is supposed to grant us autonomy in similar terms as the state universities do. Of course, we do have to think in terms of financial autonomy as well, which is a difficult issue for us. We are a federal university, we are federally funded, but there are some issues that are also very limiting for us. For example, we have a limit of amount of money. I don't know, most people don't know that, but sometimes they talk about the importance, and we acknowledge that. For us to have to look for funding in other sources besides the federal fund that we have. But most people don't know that in terms of funding, we are limited in our budget. We can only have a certain amount of money that we can get from outside sources. So we are limited. So if I am able to raise more money than what they allow me to raise, I cannot use it to the university. I have to give it back to the government. So it doesn't make sense. Okay, so even in terms of financial autonomy, this is a major problem. So there are a couple of laws, and this is one of them that is going to allow us to go for funding, to look for funding outside the federal supported money that we get, but that so that we can keep all the money that we are able to raise outside those sources. So there is a law that is being passed. It's a proposal of law. It's not a law itself, but it's also another one that has been discussed, autonomy of the universities. It's a very controversial issue, and we have over the years faced several restrictions regarding that matter. So it's a major concern in the pandemic context, because the more autonomy we have, the better we can cope with the mission that we have to fulfill at this moment. And sometimes we are very much limited by the regulations and all the bureaucratic means that we have to fulfill our duty. The state university, they have much more freedom, and especially in terms of budget, in terms of organizing themselves than we have. And this, we suffer greatly because of that. So a lot of the things that we want to do, we depend on regulation that comes from the federal government. But we've been trying to discuss that. It's a very sensible issue among the federal universities. Our association, and GIFIS, which is our associations of the federal university, they have we are able to really convince the legislator.
Sandra, we can't hear you.
I think I finished.
Okay.
Did you hear me? I just finished that. The last thing I said was that we do hope that we are able to change the law, and that we are able to pass a law in the government that will give us more autonomy than what we have at the moment. Mm-hmm.
Great. That's a great idea, a big hope for all of us. For Professor Flint, if there are parallel online and in-present courses, it presents many challenges, but also, I agree, the opportunity to research as an experiment or quasi-experiment. How each group perform?
Sorry, the last bit of it, were we asking whether the group who is distance learning performs better than the one in... So that is a great question, and we don't know yet. That would be a fascinating thing in a year's time to see. And it'll be you can imagine, you know, if the guys that are doing it from a distance get better marks than the guys in front of you, then that's not so good for the teacher.
And I think this question it's open, so you can take if you like. So, but from Lauro Neto, from the School of Engineering at USP in São Carlos, I would like to know how the universities are evaluating the transition to online classes. What are the learning difficulties from this process so far?
Maybe I can say a couple of things. To be honest, we're right in the middle of it now. We don't really know. It's been such an effort to move as far as we have, and we have a long way further to go by September. So the answer really, I think, is the same as to the last question, that about this time next year we will know quite a lot more. You know, there are many issues trying to have a system that is just as equitable and fair for the guys who are sitting remotely, perhaps, you know, in Singapore, versus the guys sitting in front of the teacher physically in Manchester. You know, things like practical classes for the guys sitting in Singapore sure, we can sort of demonstrate it, and we'll be filming, lots of filming of people like me actually, doing the practical exercise, whereas the guys in front can actually do it for themselves. And I would have thought that has to be better. So, like Sandra said, I don't see the distance learning taking over completely. I think there's something deeply important about doing that work, that job yourself. That be that lab class, or be that work with literature, or surveying people, or whatever. Surely it's the second best thing to do it remotely, and the best thing to do it as much as possible physically right there.
Okay, so perhaps our final question before your, if Sandra would like to comment on this, or let's move to the last one.
Yes. I'm sorry, Márcio. I just.
Yeah, I noticed.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
My internet, apparently my internet is not as good yet.
But okay, I think this is a general question, and I think that we could end this very exciting meeting with this intriguing question: is what can we take that is positive out of all of this? So I would like to hear from both of you, your feelings. Professor Sandra first, and then Professor Flint.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Márcio. I was about to answer that question when my internet went bad and I was disconnected. I think there's been a lot of difficulties. That's correct. The adaptation process has been difficult for our community. There are a lot of things that cannot be done on distance. A good example is how to work with the labs. Lab teaching is a strong difficulty. What can we take that is good from this? I think it has to do with the two things mainly that we have learned. One of them is that we need to be flexible. Under the situations that we are living, we do have to be flexible. And it has to do with the way that we are dealing with our students, the way that we are dealing with our staff, our professors. The situation is very difficult for everybody, and we do have to think in terms of flexibility. And if we think in terms of flexibility, we also have to transfer that flexibility into the way that we think in terms of teaching. I think we've been over the years considered teaching, as Connie question addressed that. We've been doing our teaching in the same way over and over again. And we do need to think in different ways of teaching and being more flexible and thinking about other possible experiences that our students need to have or can have and that can contribute to their degree, which are not just sitting in classrooms and doing some homework and going through exams. Even the notion of exams, they have to change. Nowadays, a lot of people have been talking about there are different ways of testing these students. I think we are learning a different way of dealing with our community with more flexibility, thinking about teaching and learning process in a different situation. And something else that I think we have learned about solidarity. We have to learn about having a society that has more solidarity, a community that develops more solidarity among its members. We do have to think about a country and a world that thinks more about its connection to other people, about the environment. I think this is also something that we have learned from this experience. That's why I said that we're not going to be the same. I think what has happened to us has also made us think about the way that we as society we did something really wrong. We are thinking about us as individuals without thinking about society as a whole, without thinking about the fact that what we do affect the others, without being flexible. So I think when we come back to a situation that we had before, when we are able to live in society freely as we did, I do hope, of course it's a wish, that we are going to be a different society, more flexible, more sensible, more sensitive, and thinking in terms of solidarity. I think that's what I think. Mm-hmm.
Professor Flint?
I completely agree, Sandra. I'd written words here like resilience, that we will beat this thing. And this really shows, the depth of human spirit. I mean, sadly, many people have lost family members and so on, and I'm afraid there will be more. But we will get through this, And 2 weeks ago, I was in a meeting in my own department, actually, with all of the teachers of geoscience, about 50 people. And it was just amazing how, I thought, oh, this is going to be one of those meetings where some guys are moaning about this or moaning about that, and why should I have to change? There was not that. It was remarkable. Everyone was just somehow, the guys, the older guys, it was just, okay, we're going to do this thing. It's not going to beat us. We're going to provide top quality education to the students, come what may. And I think that sort of human spirit thing is impressive to see.
Excellent. I like it very much, your instance. But we have a very final question from a special person among us, Professor Abílio Baeta Neves, and the question is addressed to both of you. So we acknowledge that new themes are actually old, updating teaching methods, active learning, etc. The pandemic made the universities change. As Professor Stevens said, we advanced at least 2 years in teaching methods. How can we make sure it doesn't change back? And this is the really last one. So
that's difficult. We cannot guarantee. I think we cannot guarantee is a difficult word, but I think we can work towards it. And I think the fact that we are discussing those issues is already a change. The fact that this plays central stage in our discussion, in our central councils, in the university councils that decide about the future of the university, it means something. The fact that a lot of these issues are registered in regulations and about the university, it means something. So I think that, of course, there's going to be resistance. Of course, that part of some of the professors might go back to the way it was. Some of the students might want to go back the way that it was. But the fact that it has been discussed among the community, the fact that regulations have been approved towards this new model of teaching, the fact that it has been taught to our professors, these new methods, this active learning, this flipped classroom concept, people are using it, people are reading about it. It is already changing the mentality of the professor, the mentality of our community and our staff. So I think it's going to be more difficult to go back to the way it was. Some of it will go back to the way it was, but I think it's never going to be the same. I'm positive. I'm very optimistic about it. I think it has changed. In this sense, it has changed for the better. In the same way that I think that the fact that we are discussing it and we are proving it within our university is going to make a difference for the future as well. It's going to be registered, and the fact that we are also investing, this is also not something important, Professor Abílio Baeta, is that we are investing our resources on that. Our university, we are putting a lot of money on our systems so that we are able to give professors the support so that they can use these new tools in their classrooms. So we are giving them the support. I think that makes a difference as well. I think the universities are involved in that. Without the means, without the support, it is difficult really to encourage. So I think a lot of it is going to depend on us as administrators, as head of the university, and a lot of it is going to depend as well on those who are at the ends, who are going to receive and discuss it. But I think if it's part of our discussion, if it's part of something that the university discusses and are interested in, I think we have a good chance of succeeding. I think I would put it that way. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sandra. Professor Flint?
Well, I think if we can all make this a global journey, so we're all doing the same sort of thing, you know, that will give us confidence as a whole global community of educators. And I think, you know, if we can get this right, the students won't want to go back. They'll want to be, you know, more in control of their own learning, actually, with our help. And I think it should be positive.
That's a very good point. Well, before finishing up, I would like to hear from you your last considerations, if you like, and then back to me to finish up. Okay. So Professor Sandra and then Professor Flint.
Well, thank you. I would like, again, to thank you, Márcio, and Professor Carlucci, Professor Baeta Neves, Connie, and everybody who put together this excellent panel. Thank you very much, Professor Stephen Flint. It was a pleasure meeting you in person and having a chance to listen to what you have to say. I would like to go back to something that I said in the beginning, that I do hope that this event and also the situation that we are living at the moment, it opens the way to different kinds of cooperation among our institutions. I do hope that we are able to collaborate more actively, not only in terms of our universities, but in terms of research, in terms of students exchange, because we do have, when you talk about online activities, you know, as I said, it does allows us to have more room for cooperation among our institutions. I do believe that the future is in cooperation. There is only way, that's the only way we're going to find a solution, you know, to fight COVID-19 is through cooperation among institutions and among universities, first of all. And I do think that we as institutions, we are also we're only going to get further in our pursuit of our goals if we cooperate together. So here, thank you very much for including UFMG in this panel. It's a pleasure. USP is a reference for us, you know, our reference in terms of universities in Brazil. And for me, it's a great pleasure to be here with you too. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for your kind words. And now we go to Professor Flint for his final considerations.
Well, thank you. Just a few words, really. I was delighted to be invited. I always enjoy coming to Brazil, and although it's only electronic this time, it's still a great pleasure. Yes, I mean, Sandra said it all there, really. It's all about collaboration. We do a better job. We learn from each other, and the beneficiary in the end will be the students, who will be tomorrow's global citizens. I think that's so important. These are the people that will move the world forwards, you know, if prepared properly by ourselves. So thank you again very much, and look forward to coming back to Brazil really next year.
Thank you very much. But just before finish up, a few words. I shouldn't be here, so I was not supposed to be here today. Our Provost of Postgraduate Studies, Professor Carlos Gilberto Carlotti Jr., tested positive for COVID-19, and he's now at home watching us, but he's nice and he's getting better in a daily basis. and he'll be with us for the next forum, in mid-August. But really, to finish up, so I would like to express my deep gratitude to all of you, Professor Sandra, Goulart, and Professor Stephen Flint, for this very exciting and open-minded event. And I hope you may participate in the forthcoming events. And again, thank you very much for the audience. And we have over 350 people watching us during this day. Thank you very much. And take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
You too.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.